On Sunday the 15th of October, just earlier this month, a 22-year-old woman named Hailey Silas would call the West Memphis police, claiming to be in serious danger. Officers soon arrived on the scene, but after speaking with the young mother in person, they didn't believe her story, and so decided to arrest her for making a false claim. And then 6 days later, her lifeless body was discovered just a few miles away, floating on a barge in the Mississippi River. At this moment in time, we do not know her cause of death, but with Hailey being the third victim in a month to be found in this area, many are beginning to wonder, could there be an active serial killer in Memphis who is preying on young women? Hailey Silas was born in 2001 to her mother Lorena Doro in the windy state of Oklahoma. For most of her life, she lived in a town called Luther. However, little else is known about her childhood at this time. She was described by her family to be a wonderful person who was always so patient and kind, which was evident by her strong passion for animal welfare. But even outside of her immediate family, these qualities were also noticed, especially by her soon-to-be boyfriend, Cesar Perez, who she would later start a relationship with. Well, safe to say, the connection between the couple quickly grew, and then towards the end of 2018, Hailey eventually fell pregnant with their first child. However, what would usually be an incredibly difficult time for any young couple would only seem to strengthen the relationship, and then by mid-2019, their son was finally born. Hailey was always described as a natural mother who was completely devoted to her child, but as the years went by, something inside her seemed to change. Mental illness would slowly creep up on the young woman, and in 2023, she started suffering episodes of panic attacks that would seem to grow in severity each time. We do not know if this was a lifelong struggle, but what we do know is that her paranoia eventually built up to that fateful day in October, where her symptoms appeared to be so bad that she was forced to call the police. On Sunday the 15th of October, Hailey decided to go on a 500-mile road trip from her home in Oklahoma to the state of Tennessee, where she would eventually stop at a local gas station in West Memphis. However, once she arrived, Hailey then began to suffer shortness of breath and felt her heart rate start to rise rapidly. At that point, she then started to have episodes of paranoia where she felt like her life was in real danger. In response to her panic, she felt like she had no other option than to call the police several times, where she begged them to give her a ride out of the city as soon as possible. The 911 operator tried to calm Hailey down over the phone as they could tell she was in distress, but this didn't seem to help, and so seriously concerned for her well-being, the West Memphis police were eventually sent out to the Casino Express gas station on Ingram Boulevard. They quickly arrived on the scene, where they were met with a disheveled-looking woman who was in the midst of a full-blown panic attack. Her behaviour was escalating and likely becoming dangerous, whether to herself or other people we do not know, and she was then put into handcuffs and driven down to the local police station. At this point, Hailey then asked if she could be taken to a psych ward due to her ever-increasing anxiety, but after the police refused, she settled for a phone call with her parents. A psychological evaluation was later conducted to see if her symptoms were a result of mental illness or a simple cry for attention, and then shortly after, she was officially charged with making a false claim to the police and given a slap on the wrist. But this diagnosis would soon come seriously into question when the 22-year-old woman would suddenly go missing the very next day. On Wednesday the 18th of October, Hailey Silas was finally released from the West Memphis jail after serving 4 days for her illegitimate claims. She pleaded guilty for her alleged crime and then was free to roam the streets once again. It is currently unknown how Hailey chose to spend the rest of her day, but what we do know is that her mother Lorena would later confirm that her daughter appeared to be in high spirits, as the very next day, on Thursday the 19th of October, she posed for a picture on a bridge where she displayed a large smile and spoke vividly about her plans that evening to go to a karaoke bar. But unfortunately, this would be the last time Lorena would ever speak to her 22-year-old daughter, as later that day, she would suddenly stop responding to her messages. Now, given that Hailey was a mature woman who was free to make her own decisions and live her life how she chose, Lorena didn't question her daughter on where she was and simply assumed she was safe and sound, so no missing person was ever filed. But this would soon reveal itself to be a fatal mistake, as just 2 days later, a body was discovered on a barge in North Haven, which would later be confirmed to be that of a young woman. On Saturday the 21st of October, the Shelby County Sheriff's Department were officially called out to the Mississippi River to inspect the remains. At the time, the body could not be identified as there was no ID or mobile phone present, so the police were forced to bring it in for examination to determine the identity as well as the cause of death. Fingerprints were retrieved from the body and sent for testing, but for the next few days there was nothing but radio silence on Shelby County's Jane Doe. But then 3 days later, the results of the test were finally confirmed without a shadow of a doubt that the body belonged to a 22-year-old woman named Hailey Silas. Given her recent run-in with the law, the sheriffs were also able to locate her mother's phone number, so the next step was to call her and deliver the bad news. But as you can imagine, this was met with utter despair, with Lorena understandably breaking down over the notion that her young daughter was no longer alive. The police also confessed the graphic details surrounding the case, stating that based on the evidence available, they felt no foul play was involved at this time. But this verdict was met with a swift rebuttal from Lorena, as she had some very interesting evidence which seemed to contradict this hasty conclusion. According to Lorena, she had attempted to get in touch with her daughter a few times in the days building up to the body discovery, and on one occasion, a mysterious man had picked up the phone. At the time, she assumed this was just a friend of Hailey's and it was nothing to worry about, but given the news about her daughter, she rightfully asked the police to look into this as a potential lead. Now, unfortunately, this is all we know about the case for now, but with Hailey's controversial run-in with the West Memphis police occurring just 6 days prior to her body's discovery, there is definitely a requirement here for further investigation, in my opinion. Especially given that in the last month there have been 2 other well-known instances of young women being found dead under similar suspicious circumstances along the Mississippi River. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, to kick things off, I would just like to say that I personally think the statement from Hailey's mother should be held as an extremely crucial piece of information. Of course, at this stage, we have no idea who this man is or how he was able to come into possession of Hailey's phone. But if this were my daughter, I know I would be hunting this person down as quickly as possible. So you would hope that this is something the Shelby County Sheriff's Department are investigating as well, as this mysterious man may just be the key to finding out what really happened to Hailey. But say we do eventually track down this potential suspect, could he be guilty of murder? Or could he have simply stumbled upon a dropped cell phone on the floor? Well, we can only speculate for now, but if he is somebody who knows Hailey and is refusing to come forward, this to me is extremely suspicious activity which would firmly point in the direction that he is somehow involved. But before we delve too deep into the depravity of murder, could Hailey's death have just been a simple self-inflicted accident? Well, given her behaviour at the gas station 6 days prior, this would certainly raise the question of Hailey's mental health. But if the police made her confess to making a false police claim, surely they were under the impression that she was faking her distress. But even if that was the case, what would Hailey stand to gain from doing this? As far as we're aware, she was alone at the time of her episode, so it's not like she was trying to cause a scene on purpose. Although I suppose it's possible she was with a man at the time, and she wanted to get him in trouble by calling the police and claiming to be in danger. This certainly wouldn't be the first time a woman has done this, but given the lack of evidence released by the police, we can only speculate on this for now. But taking a step back, if the police truly felt she was of sound mind and was simply fabricating her panic attack, how do you explain her sudden death? Well, maybe she was drunk or taking substances and accidentally fell off the side of the bridge onto the barge. Or maybe she was with someone who pushed her. The fact is, we simply don't know. But given the rate of murder victims cropping up along the Mississippi River in recent months, I wouldn't be too surprised if there was a suspect behind Hailey's death. Perhaps somebody who has killed before. But saying this, could there actually be a serial killer roaming the streets of Memphis right now? Well, to provide some context to this theory, it should be noted that Memphis is the largest city in Tennessee, and the 25th largest city in the United States in terms of population. So based on this, I feel it would be fair to say that the city is quite a densely populated area, which unfortunately brings with it a larger probability of potential killers. Now, I'm not saying this is evidence alone, but when you compare the details of the latest murder inquiries to come out of this city, you could argue that a pattern seems to be emerging. Tamia Taylor was a case I covered on this channel around a month ago now, which is the story of a 21-year-old mother who suddenly went missing whilst aboard a riverboat on the Mississippi River. Her body was found 2 weeks later, but to this day we still don't know what really happened to her, with several different potential suspects in the mix. But one thing we do know is that Tamia wasn't the only victim who would mysteriously turn up dead in the city of Memphis, as just 4 days after Tamia would officially disappear, another young woman named Bonita Adams would follow a similar fate. This woman was last seen at a gas station in Southaven before she was reported missing by her family 2 weeks later. After the report was filed, the police were able to match the profile to a deceased body they had previously found on the train tracks, leading to another open investigation surrounding her strange death. But other than these rather superficial case similarities, is there any actual concrete proof that these cases are actually connected? Well, the Hailey Silas case is still extremely fresh, so at this time it's impossible to say. But the timelines of when these deaths occurred, alongside the similar profiles of the victims, is enough evidence in my opinion to make a loose connection that is at least worth following up on. After all, who knows, once we turn over the stone, we may discover several other cases that also fit the same description. Anyway, with that, I think I'll leave this video here, but I'm sure there are many more victims out there that for whatever reason haven't received as much exposure. So if there are any other cases that you would like me to cover on this channel, please leave their names in the comments below and I will get working on the next video right away. But in the meantime, if you would like to hear more details on the cases of Tamia Taylor and Bonita Adams, make sure to check out the videos on screen now for a deeper dive into their stories.